Hello and welcome to the 57th episode of Jazzology presented by Savage Content. I'm your host, Willard Jenkins. We're here alternating Fridays, giving two jazz fans the opportunity to compete against each other for a chance to win $100. Each contestant will be asked a question worth 2 points. If they're unable to answer correctly, their opponent will have a chance to steal the question for 1 point. We'll ask 10 questions, and at the end of the 10 questions, the person with the lowest score will get a bonus question for the opportunity to tie the score, no matter how far they're behind in the score. If they're successful, the game will go to sudden death. The person in the lead at the end of regulation will go first in sudden death, and each contestant will take turns trying to answer the sudden death multiple choice question until we have a winner. And now let's meet this week's contestants. Our reigning Jazzology champion is Matt Merewitz. Matt is the founder and director of Fully Altered Media, which he founded in 2007, and Matt has become known as one of the most in-demand publicists and consultants in the world of creative music. Our challenger for this 57th episode of Jazzology is Mike West, a.k.a. Michael J. West, a music journalist and reviews editor at DownBeat magazine, as well as a contributor to the Washington City paper, Washington Post, and other publications. So let's get to today's Jazzology, and as our reigning champion, Matt Merewitz goes first. You ready, Matt?
Sure.
All right, Matt. The book, The Encyclopedia of Jazz in the 60s, originally published in 1966, was co-authored by Leonard Feather and which of his fellow jazz critics? Was it A, Martin Williams, B, Ira Gitler, C, Dan Morgenstern, D, Bob Blumenthal, or E, Quinn Gabbard?
So definitely not Bob Blumenthal, because Bob was a kid in the 1960s. I think that it's either, for me, Leonard Feather and, Encyclopedia of Jazz in the 60s. In the 60s, right, you said?
Yes, indeed.
So, I mean, I have a feeling Ira Gitler. Can you put the question back on the screen?
Yeah, in the book in the Encyclopedia of Jazz, which was originally published in 1966, was co-authored by Leonard Feather and which of his fellow jazz critics? Martin Williams, Ira Gitler, Dan Morgenstern, Bob Blumenthal, or Quinn Gabbard?
Encyclopedia of Jazz. You know, it could be Martin, Ira, or Dan, any of those, and I don't know the book super well. So, I mean, in the 60s, I just my feeling is Ira Gitler, so I'm going to go with that.
That is correct. It was indeed Ira Gitler who co-authored the Encyclopedia of Jazz in the 60s with Leonard Feather, and also the reprise. They actually updated the Encyclopedia of Jazz and published it again in the 1980s. So Ira Gitler and Leonard Feather worked on that. All right, so Matt is up 2-0, and Michael is up next. Michael, the book Lady Day, The Many Faces of Billie Holiday, was written by whom? Was it A, Stuart Nicholson, B, John Zwed, C, Robert O'Meally, D, John Hasse, or E, Farrah Jasmine Griffin?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. Any of those is a viable answer. Although Stuart generally concentrates on European jazz. That's generally not there. There's lots of exceptions to that, but I'm gonna because I need some reason to eliminate somebody. I'm going to start there. John, I know John Hassey's Gellington book, but if he wrote a Billie Holiday, it's new to me. So that leaves Zwed, O'Malley, and Farah Jasmine Griffin. John Zwed feels right to me. I'm not sure if that's. I'm not sure why that is, but Zwed feels right, so I'm going with Zwed.
You're going with B, John Zwed.
Yes, sir.
That is incorrect, and Matt has an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, the book Lady Day, The Many Faces of Billie Holiday, was written by whom? Was that written by A, Stuart Nicholson? And B, John Zwed has been eliminated. C, Robert O'Malley. D, John Hassey. Or E, Farah Jasmine Griffith.
So it's funny because I know that that John Zwed did write a Billie Holiday book, but I don't think. I mean, clearly it wasn't him. Again, I agree with Stuart I agree with Mike that Stuart is not his known realm, and generally he deals with instrumentalists. John Hassey, I definitely know it's not him. He was one of my mentors, and he definitely is an Ellington scholar, although he knows a lot about a lot of stuff. Farah Jasmine Griffin strikes me as someone who is not so much a jazz biographer as much as a cultural writer about kind of more sociological aspects of the music. She may have written a biography, but my understanding is that she's more broad-minded and not focusing in on any specific musician. That leaves me with Robert O'Malley, who's I think the head of jazz and American studies at Columbia. I think Farah is also at Columbia. But for this, I'm feeling like by process of elimination, it's Robert O'Malley.
And that was a good and quite successful process of elimination. But I might add that with the exception of John Hassey, each of those writers has written books on Billie Holiday.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they have all written biographical appreciations of Billie Holiday. And Robert O'Malley wrote the book Lady Day, The Many Faces of Billie Holiday. All right, so Matt, here you go again. Matt, the guitar great Wes Montgomery was discovered working in a club called the Missile Room in what city? Would that have been A, Columbus, Ohio, B, Chicago, C, St. Louis, D, Indianapolis, or E, Gary, Indiana?
So this seems too simple to be true, but I think the most obvious choice is the best one in this case because I don't think he had ever left town before he was discovered. I believe he was discovered by Cannonball Adderley and brought to the attention of Orrin Keefe News at Riverside, who gave him his first record deal. So I'm going to say that that's Indianapolis. It could be a trick question, but I think it's Indianapolis.
Indeed, it was Indianapolis. And that reminds all of us, I should say, of the fact that Indianapolis is a town which has not received its just due in terms of the jazz history map. Indianapolis produced a lot of wonderful musicians, and Wes Montgomery was the head of the class, I guess you could say. And you're right about the evolution of the so-called discovery of Wes Montgomery, because it was Cannonball Adderley that heard him and turned Orrin Keepnews on to him, and Orrin Keepnews subsequently went to the Missile Room in Indianapolis to discover Wes Montgomery. So there you have it. Mike, you're up next.
Okay.
Mike, name the baritone saxophone player who appeared with Billie Holiday when she famously sang Fine and Mellow on the famous 1957 CBS TV special, The Sound of Jazz. Would that have been A, Harry Carney, B, Joe Temperley, C, Jerry Mulligan, D, Serge Sholoff, or E, Leo Parker?
Well, I have to say I've seen this special Lord knows how many times.
We all have.
Yeah. And as great as all of those baritone saxophonists were, I could never ignore or forget the tall guy with the crew cut shaking his head and swinging while Billy's singing that song. It is C, Jerry Mulligan.
That is correct. It was indeed Jerry Mulligan who appeared on that famous version of Fine and Mellow with Billie Holiday on CBS TV's The Sound of Jazz. Classic jazz television for sure. All right, Matt, your turn. Matt, in decades past, Central Avenue was the heart of the jazz district in what city? Was it A, Los Angeles, B, Chicago, D, Atlanta? C, Atlanta, D, Memphis, or E, Houston? I'll read those again. Was it A, Los Angeles, B, Chicago, C, Atlanta, D, Memphis, or E, Houston, where Central Avenue was the heart of the jazz district?
So I know this right away. There's a great book on it by the journalist John J. O'Connell, who's based in L.A., or actually based in Long Beach, but wrote a book on the history of the Central Avenue scene. It is A, Los Angeles.
It is indeed Los Angeles, where Central Avenue was the heart of the jazz district. This week's mid-show break is brought to you by a new podcast for film buffs. It's called Savage Movie Night Podcast. Each episode explores a film's production, plot, actors, behind the scenes, and curious facts behind films that impacted, or in some cases should have impacted, American culture. Led by three hosts from three different generations, Savage Movie Night Podcast is available now on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and other leading podcast services. So grab some popcorn and subscribe now. And our Spotlight new release of the week is the latest from the great South African pianist and composer Abdullah Ibrahim. It's a 2-CD set titled Still Hard Boppin'. And that title is curious because we know that Abdullah Ibrahim's music has a real meditative kind of quality to it, and not something you would necessarily put the word hard next to. But at any rate, it's a wonderful recording. It's 2 CD set, and it's by Abdullah Ibrahim. It's called Still Hard Boppin'. Okay, Matt, you guys have both answered our core question, which was how did you fall in love with jazz, which we asked each of our newest contestants. Since you guys have both been on previously, I'm going to turn the questions around in a different way and ask you, Matt, what was the most recent jazz performance you checked out?
So, yeah, literally I'm in town for a festival. Now that's a good conundrum, like a kind of a funny situation you put me in, because theoretically it wasn't a jazz show, but like, who's to say that it was or it wasn't? So last night I saw the pianist Chris Davis play basically a contemporary classical music piece commissioned by the Jazz to Pad Festival from Wrocław, Poland. They come here every June. They do 4 to 7 nights of programming, and she played this with the Lutosławski String Quartet. Now, I would be hard-pressed to call that jazz, and I think she would be, and anyone else in that room would be. So, I mean, if you want my last actual jazz performance, I'm going to say before that, I went to Grand Central. I took a cab.
He's recreating his experience.
No, you know what I went to? I went to the Eric Dolphy show put on by Verona Klopp and Chris Napier at the New School. That was a great
All
show.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, I'll pose a different question to you, Mike.
Okay.
If someone were to ask you, how's the jazz scene in Washington, D.C., what would you tell them in a nutshell?
I would tell them right now it's pretty fantastic. I actually would have said after the pandemic that the center of gravity in the DMV had sort of shifted to Baltimore. But this year in 2024, it feels like it's really building up again. There's lots of young kids coming into town who can really play. I'm especially impressed by the number of drummers that are here right now, young drummers. And so I would tell everybody that it sounds great here.
All right. And I would concur with that.
Well, if I agree with you, I'm on the right path.
Having a personal stake, I would concur.
Right.
All right, Mike, you're up next. Mike, which of the following baritone vocalists made a record with the Count Basie Orchestra? Was it A, Andy Bay, B, Johnny Hartman, C, Earl Coleman, D, Arthur Prysock, or E, Billy Eckstine?
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. It's so many vocalists made records with the Count Basie Orchestra that it's impossible to be familiar with all of them. That's the trick to this question. Johnny Hartman is, of course, most famous for his record with John Coltrane, but he made a lot of records with a lot of people. So did Earl Coleman. Arthur Prysock and Billy Eckstine, to me, seem the most likely here. Wow.
Sometimes I wish there were a phone a friendly option.
I think that this would likely have been the Basie New Testament band, and their real run with singers, besides people like Joe Williams, really came when Eckstine was still active, but he was no longer working with his own band. And that, maybe it's a shot in the dark, which I've already failed on once this this game, but I'm going to go with E, Billy Eckstine. Yeah.
That's incorrect. And Matt with a chance to steal the point. Matt, which of the following baritone vocalists made a recording with the Count Basie Orchestra? Was it A, Andy Bay, B, Johnny Hartman, C. Earl Coleman, or D. Arthur Prysock? E. Billy Eckstine has been eliminated.
So, I was really hoping that Mike would get this right, so it wouldn't go when you post the question on the screen, immediately I thought Joe Williams. That would gimme, but
that would have been too easy.
I really have no. For some reason, the two that are shouting to me are Andy Bay and Earl Coleman, and I don't know. I'm going to say Andy Bay.
That's incorrect. The correct answer to that question is it was D. Arthur Prysock, who recorded with the Count Basie Orchestra.
Was that in the 1970s?
It was in the 60s, I do believe.
Okay.
Matt, you're up next. Matt, name the jazz critic who once hosted a public television series called Jazz Casual, shows which were later made available publicly by the Rhino label. Would that have been A. Dan Morgenstern, B. Stanley Crouch, C. Leonard Feather, D. That is Holly West, or E. Ralph J. Gleason?
So I know that it was associated with the Bay Area. I don't know how I know that, but I do know that. And so Dan Morgenstern was always an East Coast critic. Stanley Crouch was always a New York critic. Leonard Feather, I most associate with the East Coast as well, although he might have spent a bunch of time in LA. I think actually he did spend time in California because his daughter, Lorraine Feather, is based down there in LA. But I think the one that I most associate with the Bay Area is Ralph J. Gleason. That's my answer.
And that is correct. It was Ralph J. Gleason who hosted Jazz Casual, and those shows were made available by Rhino. So, Mike, you got some catching up to do. But remember, we still got the bonus round to come. Mike, the clarinetist and saxophonist Gregory Tardy is a member of whose current band? Would that be A. Regina Carter, B. Vijay Iyer, C. Bill Frisell, D. Julian Lodge, or E. John Schofield?
Current band. I feel I've seen him with a couple of these artists. But I know that I just saw Julian Lodge a couple months ago, and Gregory Tardy was not in that band. So I'm going to eliminate that. The same, currently Vijay Iyer is mostly working with a trio with Linda Mahon O and I believe Tyshawn Sorey. So that's not going to be it either. That leaves Regina, Bill Frisell, and John Schofield. That's 3 guitarists total there. I've eliminated 1 guitarist. This is difficult for me because I mostly am thinking of Gregory in terms of the clarinet album he just released as a leader. But I think I'm going to actually go with A, Regina Carter.
That's incorrect. And Matt has an opportunity to steal the point. Matt, the clarinetist and saxophonist Gregory Tardy, is a member of whose current band? A. Regina Carter has been eliminated. B. Vijay Iyer. C. Bill Frisell. D. Julian Lodge. Or E. John Schofield.
I'm not going to waste any time. This is C. Bill Frisell from the album 4.
That is correct. That is correct. And Mike, you'll have an opportunity to see that band at DC Jazz Fest at the end of August.
Ah, excellent.
At which Gregory Tardy will be in the band. So Mike, or excuse me, Matt, it's your turn next. With a prodigious lead, Matt. Let's see what you can do with this lead. Matt, Being Human is the title of which contemporary pianist's current release? Is that A, Chris Davis, B, Angelica Sanchez, C, Lynn Ariel, D, Mina Cho, or E, Rini Rosnes?
So Chris Davis's latest album is Diatom Ribbons Live at the Vanguard. Angelica Sanchez's latest album is a duo with Chad Taylor that's not called that, although she has another one on Pyroclastic that's also not that, or from earlier 2023. Mina Cho, can't say I know her. Rini Rosnes, her albums are on Smoke Sessions, and that does not sound familiar. I have this feeling. I think I read a review of the Lynn Ariel record in either Jazz's or Downbeat, and I think it's C, Lynn Ariel.
It is indeed Lynn Ariel, whose latest recording is simply titled Being Human. So Matt scores the points. Mike, catch-up time.
Oh, boy.
Mike, which of the following saxophonists was once a member of drummer Roy Haynes' band? Was it A, Nicole Glover, B, Faustina Dixon, C, Melissa Aldana, D, Jalil Shaw, or E, TK Blue?
Well, I can tell you right off the top that Nicole Glover and Melissa Aldana are both too young to have been in Roy's band. They both came to prominence as Roy was sort of leaving the stage. TK Blue was really associated with Randy Weston. I'm not sure about Faustina Dixon, but I am pretty sure that I met Jalil Shaw while he was playing with Roy Haynes at Bohemian Caverns many years ago. So I'm going to go with D, Jalil Shaw.
And that is correct. It was indeed Jalil Shaw among those saxophonists who performed with the Roy Haynes band. So the score is Matt 12 and Michael 4. And Michael, as the rules of the game specify, you have an opportunity to catch up if you answer our bonus round question correctly. And our bonus round question is, what jazz club was nicknamed the Metropolitan Opera House by jazz radio DJ Symphony Sid? Was that A, the Royal Roost, B, the Onyx Club, C, Birdland, D, Minton's Playhouse, or E, the Three Deuces?
Well, boy, I'm going to eliminate it immediately down to the Royal Roost and Birdland. because those are the two clubs that I know that Symphony Sid regularly broadcast from. And both of them were great bebop venues, which makes it tough. The big difference between them was that the Royal Roost ultimately failed, and Birdland, I guess you would say it failed, but there's still a Birdland in New York to this day. So I think, the other difference is that Birdland was the more famous club. So I think I'm going to go with C, Birdland.
That is incorrect. And that means that Matt Merewitz is our continuing champion, because the correct answer to that question, as in what jazz club was nicknamed the Metropolitan Opera House by Symphony Sid, the correct answer was A, the Royal Roost. You boiled it down to the two best choices when you boiled it down to the Royal Roost and Birdland. But it was indeed the Royal Roost that he nicknamed the Metropolitan Opera House. So that means that Matt Merewitz is once again reigning champion. We got to find a way to stop this run. I don't know what we have to do next time, Matt, but we'll work on that. Congratulations to Matt Merewitz on winning our 57th episode of Jazzology. We encourage each and every one of you to try your hand and play Jazzology. And if anyone watching would like to become a contestant on Jazzology, click the link below and simply fill out the form. You must be 18 years old or older, and be sure to follow us on social media at Jazzology Trivia Show to get all the latest news and updates. And thank you so much to Matt Merewitz and Mike West, and to everyone who joined us for our 57th episode of Jazzology today. Remember, you can check out Jazzology every other Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you missed the show live, you can find the archive on the Savage Content YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us. See y'all next time.